So in section 3, we are going to talk about a new form of a line. So far, we have standard form, which remember is ax plus by equals c. We learned slope-intercept form, and that's the one we've been focusing on the past 2 days, y equals mx plus b. And today we're going to learn one called point slope form. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to write an equation of a line in this form and then write it in 3 different ways. So you'll be asked to put stuff in either standard form, slope-intercept form, or point slope form. So here is point slope form. This is your linear equation when x1 and y1 is a point on a non-vertical line and m is the slope. So basically what happens here is we plug in the stuff from a point. So this point is x1, comma y1. And the only reason we have the 1s here is to differentiate it from the x and the y that are usually in the equation. If you look at both of these, we have an x and a y that's usually in there. Same thing with this one. This is the x and the y that are usually in there, but the other ones are from a point. Now this is really useful if you are given a point and a slope, because there's one more way we can find the equation. So write an equation in point slope form for the line that passes through -2, 1 with a slope of -6. So let's write down the form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and plug in what we know. So y minus the y in my point, which is 1, equals the slope of -6 times x minus the x in my point, which is a -2. Now this is the equation in point slope form, but if we need to graph it, let's put it into slope-intercept form. So in order to do that, we want to get rid of these parentheses. So we're going to distribute. So we get -6x minus 12, and then we'll add 1 to both sides. So we get y equals -6x minus 11. Now, pay attention to what the question asked. It wanted an equation in point slope form. So for that part, this is our answer. This right here answers that question. The only reason we did this is to make it a little easier to graph. Now when I come over here and find -11, it's nowhere to be found on this. So what we can do is graph something in point slope form given the point and the slope. So this point, -2, 1, is right here. And a slope of -6 would mean down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. Or I could go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. And here's my line. So obviously -11 is off my graph here, and this is not straight at all. But using the rest of the information, I can still make a graph. So write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. Remember that's y equals mx plus b. With a slope of 3 that passes through 2, 1. So we actually did this exact same problem in the notes 2 nights ago. But now I want you to start off with it in point slope form. So remember this form here. If you know you're going to forget this, write it down. Plug in the y in your point, which is 1. Plug in your slope. Plug in the x in the point, and then we can distribute. So when I distribute here, I get 3x minus 6. And if I add 1 to both sides, I get y equals 3x minus 5. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this is just one other way that we can do what we've already been doing. So, if we think back to what we had already done, we would have come up with this, right? And then we would have plugged in the 1 here, we would have plugged in the 2 here, we would have gotten 6, and then we would have subtracted it, so you would have gotten that b is 5, -5. And then that's where this came from. So keep in mind that this is just one more way to do it. If we plug it into point slope form, all we have to do is simplify to get this answer. rather than having to find the b and then plug it back in. So write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form that passes through those 2 points. So same idea as before. It doesn't matter what we start with, we always need the slope. So let's find the slope between these two. And hopefully these look familiar because we did them in class today. So we end up with a slope of 4 over 1, which is just 4. And now on a test or a quiz, unless I specifically ask, I do not care if you use this or this method in order to figure out y equals mx plus b. I'm going to use point slope form again because it's new. And just like before, it doesn't matter what point you pick. I can choose either one. Let's pick this one because it's first. So I want y minus the y in my point equals the slope I just found times x minus the x in my point. Got a little bit of distributing here. Subtract 2 from both sides. And if you go back and look in the notes that we did today in class, we got this exact same answer without using this formula. So like I said, it doesn't matter which one you use unless I specifically state that you have to use one or the other. So this was the second part of the objectives. I can write an equation of a line in 3 different forms. So the first question that I'm asking you here is to put this in standard form. The second question I'm asking you to put it in slope-intercept form. So before we start doing any work, let's think about what those are. This one needs to look like this, and this one needs to look like this. So let's start with the top one. In order to get it in standard form, I cannot have parentheses, I cannot have fractions, and my x's and y's need to be on the left, where all my numbers need to be on the right. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. But the first thing we should do is get rid of those parentheses. So let's distribute this. Negative 2x over 3 plus 10 over 3. The next thing I notice is that there's fractions. We need to get rid of these. Fractions are not our friends, and we cannot have them in standard form. So both of these have a denominator of 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything in this equation by 3 and see what happens. This becomes 3y minus 3. And on this side, if I multiply this fraction by 3, I just get negative 2x. And here, oops, I just get 10. Now this is much prettier. We're almost in this form, but I need to get x and y on the same side and all my numbers on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2x to both sides. So that gives me 2x plus 3y minus 3 equals 10. And now this number's got to move over. So we get 2x plus 3y equals 13. Now keep in mind, if I was to type both of these equations into Desmos, this one here and this one here, they would be exactly the same line, but they're just written in different forms. So let's try the next one. I need to put this in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form, I basically just need to get this y by itself and get rid of the parentheses. Here, fractions are totally okay. So I'm going to distribute first. 3 halves x plus 3 halves. And then I got to get y alone. So minus 3, minus 3. So we spent an entire 2 weeks on fractions. Everyone should be able to do this. So remember, you have to have common denominators. So 3 over 1 is the same thing as 6 over 2. So this turns into negative 3 over 2. And this is the same line as this one, just in slope-intercept form. So you have a couple problems to do on your own. Pay attention to the forms that it's asking you to put them in, and this one you need to graph. Make sure you write down any questions you have, and we can go over them together in class. Enjoy your night.